The whistle of the eastbound train 219 pierced the afternoon stillness as it pulled away from Silverridge Station, leaving a lone figure standing on the platform. 22-year-old Theodora Evans clutched her worn leather suitcase in one hand and a crumpled letter in the other, squinting into the horizon as dust devils danced across the barren landscape of New Mexico Territory, 1885. The station master, an elderly man with a salt and pepper beard, cast a sympathetic glance in her direction. "Miss, we'll be closing up soon. You sure someone's coming for you?" Theodora nodded, though uncertainty flickered across her face. "Yes, sir. Mr. Irwin said he'd meet me here." She smoothed the wrinkles from her travel-worn blue dress, a garment she'd carefully selected for her first meeting with her future husband. "Well, Clayton Irwin's ranch is a good 15 miles from here. Might be he got held up." The station master adjusted his spectacles. "You're welcome to wait inside, but I can't stay much beyond sundown." "Thank you," Theodora replied softly, gathering her belongings and stepping into the modest wooden station house. Alone in the quiet building, she unfolded the letter for perhaps the 100th time since leaving Boston 3 weeks prior. "Dear Miss Evans," it read in a steady, deliberate hand. "I have received your response to my advertisement and find your character most agreeable. Silverridge is a growing town with opportunity for those willing to work hard. My ranch provides well, and I seek a woman of good standing to share in its bounty and perhaps, in time, build a family. I shall meet you at the station upon your arrival on the 15th of May. Respectfully, Clayton Irwin." Brief, practical, much like she imagined the man himself to be. Theodora had answered the newspaper advertisement on a cold January morning, desperate for escape from the dwindling prospects of spinsterhood in Boston and the suffocating expectations of her late parents' social circle. At 22, with no dowry to speak of after her father's failed investments, she had become the subject of pitying glances and hushed conversations. The hours passed with excruciating slowness. Through the station window, Theodora watched the sun begin its descent toward the jagged mountain peaks. Her stomach growled, reminding her that she'd eaten nothing since a meager breakfast on the train. The station master gathered his belongings. "Miss, I truly hate to say it, but I've got to lock up now. Please," Theodora said, fighting to keep her voice steady. "Could I wait just a little longer? Perhaps Mr. Irwin encountered difficulties on the road." The old man sighed, his weathered face softening. "I suppose I could give you another half hour, but then you'll need to come with me to town. My wife runs the boarding house. It's clean and respectable. You can try again tomorrow." Theodora nodded gratefully, though anxiety bloomed in her chest. Her funds were limited, carefully calculated to last until her wedding. A night at a boarding house hadn't been part of her plan. The station master stepped outside, leaving Theodora to her thoughts. Through the window, she watched the purpling sky fighting back tears. Had Clayton Irwin changed his mind? Had he seen her step off the train and found her wanting? The sound of approaching hoofbeats drew her attention. Hope surged as she peered through the glass, making out a single rider approaching at a gallop. The figure rode straight to the station, dismounting with fluid grace. Theodora smoothed her hair and straightened her posture as the door swung open. The man who entered was not what she had pictured. Tall and broad-shouldered, yes, but younger than she'd imagined, perhaps 28 or 30. His face was sun-bronzed beneath a layer of dust, with striking blue eyes that stood out sharply against his tanned skin. A light brown cowboy hat was pushed back on his head, and in his arms he carried a cloth-wrapped bundle that emitted a warm, yeasty aroma. "Miss Evans?" he asked, slightly out of breath. She stood, knees trembling slightly. "Yes, Mr. Irwin," a complicated expression crossed his face. "No, madam, I'm Caleb Ingram. I worked for Clayton." He set the bundle down and removed his hat, revealing dark hair damp with sweat. "I'm afraid I come with difficult news." Theodora's heart sank. "Is Mr. Irwin ill?" Caleb's gaze dropped to his dusty boots. "Clayton Irwin passed away 3 days ago, Miss Evans." thrown from his horse while checking the north fence line. It was quick he didn't suffer. The room seemed to tilt beneath Theodora's feet. She gripped the back of a chair for support. "I know this comes as a shock," Caleb continued. "We only found your letters yesterday when we were sorting his affairs. I came as fast as I could, hoping to catch you before your arrival, but I see I'm too late." "I see," Theodora whispered, her mind racing. Everything, all her careful planning, her last-ditch hope for a future crumbled around her. "I brought this," Caleb said, unwrapping the bundle to reveal a loaf of freshly baked bread. "Thought you might be hungry after your journey. It's still warm." The unexpected kindness nearly undid her composure. "Thank you," she managed. The station master appeared in the doorway. "Everything all right here?" Caleb nodded. "I'll see to Miss Evans, Mr. Holloway. Thank you for waiting with her." After the station master left, an uncomfortable silence settled between them. Theodora fought to process her new reality. No husband, no home, no plan. "Miss Evans," Caleb finally said, "I've arranged a room for you at the boarding house in town. Tomorrow we can discuss your options." "Options?" Theodora echoed hollowly. "Yes, madam, I could help arrange your return ticket to Boston if that's what you wish," or he hesitated. "Or what, Mr. Ingram?" Clayton's sister lives in Santa Fe. She's a widow who runs a millinery shop. She might be able to offer you employment if you're skilled with a needle. Theodora considered this. Return to Boston in disgrace, or forge ahead into a new, unplanned future. Neither prospect seemed particularly appealing. "The bread," Caleb said, breaking into her thoughts. "You should eat something. The boarding house serves dinner at 7, but that's still an hour away." Theodora nodded, accepting a piece of the warm bread he offered. It was surprisingly good, dense, and slightly sweet. "Did you bake this?" she asked, realizing she was indeed famished. A flush crept across Caleb's cheeks. "Yes, madam, I do most of the cooking at the ranch. Clayton wasn't much for kitchen work." They ate in silence for a few moments, the simple act of sharing food somehow easing the tension between them. "How many men work at Mr. Irwin's ranch?" Theodora asked finally. "Just 2 of us now, me and Amos Jenkins. We had a third hand, but he moved on last month." Caleb brushed crumbs from his hands. "It's a modest operation compared to some, but the land is good. Clayton built it from nothing." "And what happens to it now?" Caleb looked uncomfortable. "That's being sorted out. Clayton has a cousin back east who might inherit, but no one's certain. For now, Amos and I are keeping things running." Theodora nodded, her mind working. "Mr. Ingram, I appreciate your kindness in coming to tell me this news in person. I'll need some time to consider my next steps." "Of course." He stood, placing his hat back on his head. "My horse is outside and the boarding house isn't far. If you're ready, I can take you there now." The ride into Silverridge was brief but illuminating. Theodora sat behind Caleb on his sturdy mare, trying to maintain a proper distance despite the necessity of holding onto his waist. The town was smaller than she'd imagined a main street with the essential businesses, a church with a white steeple, and neat rows of houses radiating outward. Mrs. Holloway, the station master's wife, proved to be a kind, motherly woman who clucked sympathetically upon hearing Theodora's situation. "You poor dear," she said, showing Theodora to a clean, simply furnished room. "What a dreadful welcome to our territory. You must be exhausted." "Thank you for your hospitality," Theodora replied, fighting to maintain her composure. "I won't impose on your kindness for long." "Nonsense, Mrs. Holloway said firmly. "You take all the time you need to sort things out. Dinner's in half an hour. Wash up and come down when you're ready." Left alone, Theodora finally allowed her tears to fall. She wept quietly for the future she'd imagined, for the security she'd hoped to find, and for Clayton Irwin, a man she'd never meet. Eventually, she washed her face in the provided basin and changed into her one other dress, a simple gray garment that had seen better days. Dinner was a subdued affair, with just the Holloways and 2 other boarders, a young schoolteacher and an elderly gentleman who sold patent medicines. Caleb had declined Mrs. Holloway's invitation to stay, saying he needed to return to the ranch before full dark. That boy, Mrs. Holloway remarked as she served apple pie. Works himself to the bone, has ever since he came here 5 years ago. You know Mr. Ingram well? Theodora asked. As well as anyone, I suppose. Keeps to himself mostly, but he's got a good heart. Came from Tennessee after the war, took his family's farm. Started as Clayton's stable boy and worked his way up to foreman. Theodora absorbed this information, finding herself curious about the quiet cowboy who'd brought her bread and bad news. That night, lying in the unfamiliar bed, Theodora considered her options. The return ticket to Boston would consume nearly all her remaining funds, and what awaited her there but the same desperate circumstances she'd fled. The millinery position in Santa Fe might be viable, though she had only modest skill with a needle. As she drifted toward sleep, a third option began to form in her mind, one that would require considerable courage. Morning brought clarity and determination. After breakfast, Theodora wrote 2 letters, one to her childhood friend in Boston explaining her situation, and another to Clayton Irwin's sister in Santa Fe, politely inquiring about the possibility of employment. She gave these to Mrs. Holloway to post, then asked a question that had been forming since dawn. Would it be possible to visit Mr. Irwin's ranch today? I'd like to pay my respects, as he was to be my husband. Mrs. Holloway looked surprised but nodded. I suppose that's appropriate. I can ask my husband to drive you out there when he returns for lunch. Thank you, but I've already imposed too much on your kindness. Is there perhaps a horse I might hire? An hour later, Theodora found herself on a gentle mare borrowed from the livery stable, following directions to the Irwin ranch. The 15-mile ride was longer than any she'd undertaken before, but the day was pleasant, and the territory beautiful in its stark way, so different from Boston's crowded streets. The ranch appeared on the horizon just as Theodora was beginning to doubt her navigation. It was modest but well-maintained. A 2-story main house built of sturdy logs, a large barn, several outbuildings and corrals containing horses and cattle. A creek wound through the property, lined with cottonwood trees that provided welcome shade. As she approached, Theodora saw Caleb emerge from the barn, shading his eyes against the midday sun. His surprise at seeing her was evident in his posture even before she could make out his expression. "Miss Evans," he called as she drew nearer. "I didn't expect to see you out here." Theodora dismounted, grateful for the riding lessons her father had insisted upon in more prosperous times. "Mr. Ingram, I hope I'm not intruding, but I felt I should see the place that was to be my home." Caleb took the reins of her horse. "No intrusion. Would you like to see the house?" The interior of the ranch house was simple but surprisingly comfortable. The main floor contained a spacious kitchen with a large cookstove, a dining area, and a sitting room with well-worn furniture. Upstairs were 3 bedrooms, one clearly Clayton's, with a writing desk covered in account books. "It's a fine home," Theodora said, noting the cleanliness and order. "Mr. Irwin seems to have been a meticulous man." "He was," Caleb agreed. "Everything in its place. That's how he built all this from nothing but a land grant and determination." They returned downstairs, where Caleb offered coffee. As they sat at the kitchen table, Theodora gathered her courage. "Mr. Ingram, I've been considering my situation, and I have a proposition that may seem unusual." Caleb's eyebrows rose slightly, but he nodded for her to continue. "I came west to marry and help run a ranch. While Mr. Irwin's passing changes things, my capabilities and intentions remain the same." She took a deep breath. "I propose that I stay here as a housekeeper and cook until Mr. Irwin's affairs are settled." "You mentioned doing most of the cooking yourself, and I imagine there are other household tasks that take time away from your ranch work." Caleb stared at her, clearly surprised. "Miss Evans, that's unconventional, I know," she interrupted, "but practical, I think. I'm a capable cook and housekeeper. I need accommodation and some small wage until I decide on my next steps, and you need someone to manage the domestic aspects of the ranch. It would be a temporary arrangement, of course." Caleb looked thoughtful, turning his coffee cup in his hands. It makes a certain sense, but there's the matter of propriety. A single woman living here with two men, I understand your concern, Theodora said quickly. Perhaps Mrs. Holloway or another respectable woman from town could verify the appropriateness of the accommodations. And I would occupy the small bedroom, not Mr. Irwin's. A hint of a smile appeared on Caleb's face. You've thought this through. I had a long ride to consider it, she admitted. I'd need to discuss it with Amos, Caleb said, and we should be clear on terms, but if you're certain. I am, Theodora said firmly, relief washing through her. When could I begin? Theodora's first week at the Rocking Eye Ranch passed in a flurry of activity. True to her word, she transformed the domestic aspects of ranch life, cooking hearty meals, setting up proper laundry systems, and bringing order to areas of the house that had clearly been neglected under bachelor management. Amos Jenkins, a grizzled man in his 50s with a perpetual squint, had been skeptical of her arrival but was won over by her cooking and no-nonsense approach to her duties. Mrs. Holloway had indeed come to inspect the arrangements and pronounce them acceptable, though she made it clear that Theodora's reputation was now under her personal protection. Caleb proved to be a fair employer, neither demanding nor condescending. He seemed genuinely appreciative of Theodora's contributions, frequently commenting on how much more smoothly the household ran with her presence. She noticed that he worked from dawn until well after dusk, taking on the lion's share of ranch responsibilities. One evening, after Amos had retired to his quarters in the converted tack room, Caleb lingered at the kitchen table, reviewing accounts by lamplight while Theodora kneaded dough for the next day's bread. These figures don't add up, he muttered, more to himself than to her. Is something wrong? Theodora asked, wiping flour from her hands. Caleb looked up, seeming almost surprised to find her still there. Clayton's ledgers show we should have more cash reserves than we do. I can't make sense of the discrepancy. Theodora hesitated, then offered, I have some experience with bookkeeping. My father was a merchant before his business failed. I could look at them if you'd like. Surprise flickered across Caleb's face, followed by consideration. I'd appreciate that, actually. I'm better with cattle than columns of numbers. Over the next several days, Theodora spent her evenings poring over Clayton Irwin's accounts, piecing together the ranch's financial situation. The picture that emerged was concerning. Mr. Ingram, she said on the fourth night, I believe I've found the problem. Mr. Irwin made a substantial loan to someone named Thomas Blackwell 8 months ago. Nearly $5,000 with the first repayment due last month. There's no record of that payment being made. Caleb's face darkened. Thomas Blackwell owns the largest ranch in the county and most of the businesses in Silverridge. He's not the type to miss a payment by accident. Could you inquire about it? I'll ride into town tomorrow, Caleb promised, his expression grim. He returned the following evening in a thunderous mood, slamming the door behind him with such force that Theodora nearly dropped the stew pot she was carrying. Blackwell claims Clayton forgave the debt as a wedding present for his daughter, Caleb explained after calming himself. Says they had a verbal agreement, but conveniently there's no record of it. Do you believe him? Not for a second. Clayton was meticulous about business. He'd never forgive a debt that size without documentation, especially to Blackwell, whom he never much liked. Caleb ran a hand through his hair in frustration. Without proof, though, there's little we can do. Theodora thought for a moment. The timing is interesting. You said Mr. Irwin placed his advertisement for a bride around that time, correct? Caleb nodded. January, yes. Perhaps he needed to recoup those funds to establish a household. $5,000 is a significant sum. It's more than that, Caleb said quietly. Without that money, the ranch could be in trouble. We need to make investments for next season's breeding stock, and there are property taxes coming due. What will you do? Caleb's eyes met hers, determination evident. Whatever I have to. This ranch was Clayton's life's work. I won't let Blackwell steal it through deception. The following weeks brought a shift in their relationship. United by concern for the ranch's future, Theodora and Caleb began working more closely together. She continued managing the household, but also took over the bookkeeping entirely, finding small economies that helped stretch their limited funds. Caleb, meanwhile, worked even longer hours, taking on extra cattle drives and breaking horses for neighboring ranches to bring in additional income. Theodora found herself increasingly impressed by his quiet competence and unwavering work ethic. Unlike the privileged young men she'd known in Boston, Caleb's hands were calloused from hard work, his face weathered by sun and wind. Yet there was a gentleness to him that emerged in small moments, the way he spoke to nervous horses, his patience with a newborn calf, the careful way he'd preserved Clayton's belongings. One evening in late June, nearly 6 weeks after her arrival, Theodora was hanging laundry when she noticed Caleb sitting on the porch steps, staring into the distance. On impulse, she poured 2 glasses of lemonade and joined him. "You look troubled," she observed, offering him a glass. He accepted with a nod of thanks. "Just thinking, Clayton's cousin sent word that he's planning to sell the ranch once probate is complete, wants to cash out and invest in railroads back east." Oh, the news hit Theodora with unexpected force. When would that be? End of summer, likely. Caleb took a long drink of lemonade. "I've been saving to buy my own place someday, but I'm nowhere near having enough for something like this." "Could you and Amos partner together?" Caleb shook his head. "Amos is ready to retire. His daughter in California has been asking him to move there for years." They sat in silence for a while, watching the sunset paint the landscape in shades of gold and crimson. "What will you do?" Theodora finally asked. Caleb shrugged, a gesture that failed to mask his dejection. "Find another ranch to work, I suppose. Start over." He glanced at her. "What about you? Have you decided your next steps?" Theodora had received a response from Clayton's sister, offering a position in her shop starting in September. It was a perfectly reasonable option, yet the thought of leaving the ranch and Caleb filled her with unexpected sadness. "I have an opportunity in Santa Fe," she said, "but I've grown fond of this place." Their eyes met briefly, and Theodora felt a flutter in her chest that had become increasingly familiar in Caleb's presence. "It suits you," he said softly. "You've brought life back to this house." Before she could respond, the sound of approaching riders drew their attention. 3 men on horseback were coming up the drive, the lead rider's familiar silhouette causing Caleb to tense beside her. "Thomas Blackwell," he muttered, standing. "Miss Evans, perhaps you should go inside." "I'll stay," she said firmly, rising to stand beside him. Blackwell was a corpulent man in his 50s, expensively dressed despite the dust of travel. His companions were clearly hired guns, their hands resting casually near their holsters. "Ingram," Blackwell called without dismounting, "been thinking about our conversation. Decided to make you an offer on those 50 acres bordering my east pasture. Clayton and I discussed it before his unfortunate accident." "Those acres aren't for sale, Mr. Blackwell," Caleb replied evenly, "and they won't be until Clayton's estate is settled." Blackwell's gaze shifted to Theodora, a predatory smile spreading across his face. "You must be the mail-order bride Clayton sent for. Shame you arrived too late. Pretty thing like you could do better than playing housekeeper to a cowhand." Caleb stepped forward, his posture protective. "State your business and move on, Blackwell. Miss Evans doesn't need your commentary." A dangerous light entered Blackwell's eyes. "Mind your tone, boy. You're nothing but a hired hand, and soon you won't even be that. I'll own this ranch by summer's end one way or another." "Is that a threat?" Caleb's voice was calm, but Theodora could see the tension in his shoulders. "Just a prediction," Blackwell replied, turning his horse. "Things have a way of working out in my favor, remember that." With a nod to his men, he rode away, leaving a cloud of dust and unease in his wake. "He seems determined to acquire this land," Theodora observed once they were alone again. "Too determined," Caleb agreed. "There's something he's not saying." That night, unable to sleep, Theodora remembered something Clayton had written in one of his letters, a passing comment about a new railway line being surveyed near the territory. On impulse, she lit a lamp and crept downstairs to Clayton's desk, searching through his correspondence. She found what she was looking for near the bottom of a stack. A letter from the Western Pacific Railway Company, dated just weeks before Clayton's death. It confirmed initial survey results indicating that the proposed railway line would pass directly through the eastern portion of the Rocking I Ranch, the exact 50 acres Blackwell had just offered to buy. The next morning, Theodora showed the letter to Caleb over breakfast. "This changes everything," he said after reading it twice. "If the railway comes through, that land could be worth 20 times its current value. Blackwell must have found out somehow. And the loan," Theodora added, "could have been his first attempt to gain control." When Mr. Irwin demanded repayment, Blackwell arranged an accident, Caleb finished grimly. "It's what I've suspected but couldn't prove. Clayton was too experienced a rider to be thrown from his horse on a routine fence check." "What do we do now?" Theodora asked. Caleb thought for a moment. "We need more information and legal help. I'll ride to the county seat tomorrow and talk to the railroad office directly. Then I'll wire Clayton's lawyer in Santa Fe." Over the next several weeks, the situation evolved rapidly. Caleb confirmed the railway plans and, with the lawyer's assistance, presented evidence of Blackwell's deception to the territorial judge. The investigation that followed revealed not only Blackwell's scheme to defraud Clayton's estate, but also testimony from a ranch hand who'd been paid to tamper with Clayton's saddle on the day of his fatal ride. By early August, Thomas Blackwell found himself facing criminal charges, his empire crumbling as other victims of his underhanded dealings came forward. The debt to Clayton's estate was ordered repaid in full, with interest. For Theodora and Caleb, these developments brought relief, but also highlighted the temporary nature of their arrangement. With the ranch's financial situation stabilized, Clayton's cousin accelerated his plans to sell, setting an auction date for the first week of September. One evening in mid-August, Theodora was picking vegetables in the kitchen garden when Caleb approached, his expression uncharacteristically nervous. "Miss Evans, Theodora," he began, removing his hat. "I wanted to speak with you about something important." Her heart quickened. Over these months, her feelings for Caleb had deepened beyond anything she'd expected. His integrity, his quiet strength, the gentleness behind his reserved exterior all had combined to create an attachment she could no longer deny, even to herself. Yet she'd said nothing, knowing their paths would soon diverge. "Of course," she replied, setting down her basket. "With the railway deal and Blackwell's repayment, I now have enough to make a serious bid on the ranch," he said. "The lawyer thinks I have a good chance, especially since I've been managing it successfully." "Caleb, that's wonderful news," Theodora said sincerely. "It's not just the ranch I'm thinking about," he continued, his blue eyes meeting hers directly. "These past months having you here. It's shown me what I want for my future, not just land and cattle, but a true home." Theodora's breath caught as he took a step closer. "I know this isn't how you plan things," Caleb said softly. "You came to marry Clayton, not his foreman, and maybe Santa Fe offers opportunities I can't match. But I've grown to care for you deeply, Theodora. Your intelligence, your courage, your kindness, everything about you has become precious to me." He took her hand gently in his calloused one. "I'm not offering charity or convenience. I'm offering partnership, respect, and a love that's grown stronger every day we've worked side by side. If you could consider staying, not as a housekeeper, but as my wife, it would make me the happiest man in the territory." Tears welled in Theodora's eyes as emotion overwhelmed her. All the uncertainty of the past months, all the fear of an unknown future, dissolved in the warmth of his earnest gaze. "I came west seeking security," she said finally, her voice trembling slightly. "But I found something far more valuable. I found you, Caleb." And yes, I would be honored to stay as your wife." The kiss they shared was gentle at first, then deepened with the emotion they'd both held in check for so long. When they finally parted, both were smiling through tears. "I don't have a ring yet," Caleb admitted. "But I promise, we'll choose one together," Theodora interrupted. "After all, we're partners now." The first week of September brought not only the auction but also their wedding. In a simple ceremony at Silverridge's white-steepled church, Theodora and Caleb exchanged vows with Mrs. Holloway sniffling proudly in the front pew and Amos serving as best man before his departure for California. When the auctioneer's gavel fell, confirming Caleb as the new official owner of the Rocking Eye Ranch, Theodora squeezed his hand in shared triumph. That evening, as they sat on the porch steps, now their porch, watching another magnificent sunset, Caleb pulled a small package from his pocket. "I have something for you," he said. "A wedding gift." Theodora unwrapped it to find a beautiful silver hairpin shaped like a delicate branch of sage. "It's lovely," she breathed. "It was my mother's," Caleb explained. "The only thing I saved when we lost everything after the war. I've carried it all these years as a reminder of home." He smiled, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "Now you're my home, Theodora." As autumn painted the landscape in new colors, the Rocking Eye Ranch flourished under their joint stewardship. The railway deal brought prosperity, allowing for improvements and expansion. Theodora's business acumen complemented Caleb's ranching expertise perfectly, creating a partnership that was the talk of the territory. In their private moments, they sometimes marveled at the unlikely path that had brought them together, how a mail-order bride waiting alone at a station and a cowboy carrying warm bread and desperate hope had found in each other exactly what they needed, though neither had known to look for it. And each year on the anniversary of Theodora's arrival, Caleb baked a special loaf of bread, a reminder of their beginning and the sustenance they continued to find in each other's love.